Hello, everybody. This is Erica Wright with the Oklahoma Rural Schools Coalition, and we are here, excited to be here with former Senator Ron Sharp to talk a little bit about voucher bills and things that are going on in the state with episode 3 of our Hot Topics series, talking with leaders around the state about issues that you, our rural members of the Rural Schools Coalition, have identified to be topics of importance for you. Now, in the fall, we took a poll from all of you to see what would be kind of your top 5 issues. And clearly, by a mile, the number one issue that you guys were concerned with was the issue of taking public tax dollars and diverting those dollars to fund private school tuitions and things like that. And so we are very excited and honored to have you with us here today, Senator Sharp. You have been such a inspiration for so many people, and for years have really championed public schools in a way that has been very passionate and inspiring for all of us. So thank you so much for taking time on this snowy day to meet with us and talk about this issue. So Senator Sharp, he was in the Senate for 8 years representing, you're from Shawnee, correct?
Yes.
And then 38 years prior to that, you spent 38 years in the classroom. So you bring a really unique perspective to this discussion because you've been in the classroom and you've been in the legislature and you know a whole lot more than the average Joe. And so we're really kind of excited to be able to visit with you about this today. So let's see. So my first question for you, I don't know why I'm getting feedback on my phone. So this session, in 2022, we have over 13, we have 13 voucher bills that have been proposed in the legislature to take public dollars and divert those public dollars into the private sector to fund private school tuitions and such. And so I just want to kind of get your take from your unique perspective as to why should taxpayers be concerned, particularly rural taxpayers, why should they be concerned about this movement with school choice to take their public tax dollars and put them into private schools?
You already have a problem with the school funding formula and the fact that it was not created for anything other than local district public schools. And when they created charters, or if they create a voucher, they should create a funding formula specifically for charter school or for vouchers that is not within the state's funding formula.
Right.
Again, you only put where we put 2.9 to 3.1 billion into public education, depending on the year. That money is not increased. So if you're adding charters or if you add vouchers, particularly charters and vouchers would get their money off the top. So therefore, with the rural school districts, which are in farm areas, which already get a tax break for being farm agricultural, and that's in Title 16 of the statutes, they get a break, which they should break, because again, farmers are obviously a very vulnerable business, but it is one of the top 3 businesses in Oklahoma. But they've got to have that in order to economically survive. But who is left out in the cold then is the rural schools. And if charters and then vouchers get their money off the top, there's not going to be money available for your rural school districts. So they are directly hit if this goes into the school funding formula. Already charters are creating a major problem, particularly the virtual charters, which are we've seen what happens to virtual charters. They can just put in any kind of money that they want to based on the number of kids. They can say they got 60,000 kids and who knows how many kids they really have. So it will be very problematic to do this if they're going to put it into the school funding formula.
And so say that this bill, which is taking money from the school funding formula, say that worst case scenario, it passes. What would be the tangible impact that parents of rural school students would see as a result of this? Would they see programs going away, teachers going away? What would that look like for a school?
All the above. It would be programs going away. It would be a reduction in staff. The money will just not be there unless they just increase that up, 2 or 3-fold what it is. We have no idea how many parents will actually take advantage of this. There's absolutely no possibility the Oklahoma State Department of Education could keep up with the oversight of this, because again, parents may say, okay, we're going to go to a private school, and then a month into the private school, change back to the district or change back to homeschool. I mean, there's no possibility. And then, of course, after October 1, when the count comes in, that student comes from the voucher, they've already got the money for the voucher, then they're going back into public school. You see what I'm saying? It's just too and then again, you're going to have so many little church schools start up, home covenant starting up thing that they're a part of the voucher system. It would be corruption in great magnitude. We can't keep up with that. Only way you can keep up with it is through average daily membership, or now average daily attendance through a public school. Otherwise, there's absolutely no possibility of any type of oversight. You can see all kinds of different individuals trying to take advantage of this system, which is again somewhere, I think, between $4,000 and $6,000 for the voucher. Again, when would they get the money? How would it be assessed? How the average family in the United States moves 11 times. Now you think about that. We already have school choice because they're moving from one district to another, or one elementary within a city. All of this is absolutely ridiculous. It is coming out of the taxpayer dollars. It's difficult enough to get bond issues passed with a 60% majority. You are creating a disaster for your rural and for your urban school districts. Both are going to have major problems with this because of the accountability, transparency. It cannot be done. And why legislators who have just witnessed what has happened with Epic are now, and you've got the Seaworth Academy, you've got Santa Fe South, you've got all of these charter schools that are under audits, and you're now thinking you're going to create a voucher system which is going to be transparent. No, that's not going to be transparent, and there's no possibility to be transparent on it.
Well, and that's one of the things I know that Cindy Bird, the state auditor, met with legislators just this week, and I don't have the quote with me, but basically told them that what has happened with Epic was basically the biggest fleecing of taxpayer money ever in the history of the state. And I think you offer a very unique perspective, because you were the canary in the coal mine, basically saying this is not good. You were the one who brought all of that to the forefront. You suffered for that because you became kind of a target on your back with the school choice and the Epic folks. And from what I understand, I don't know, have you had a chance? You probably haven't had a chance to. Have you read through the details of Senate Bill 1647? That's the one that's coming from Senator Treat.
Just the review of it. That's all I've had time of which to look at it. It's again, I do not understand where the Republican Party, my party, would be pushing this. The Republican Party has always been the champions of public education, rural education. It was Abraham Lincoln who pushed the Homestead Act, and section 16 and 36 are set aside for school land. Why now they would be, as a party, pushing for this privatization of schools? Again, if a parent wants to send their child to a private school, that's fine. Yeah. They already get a tax exemption for every dependent for both federal and state. Again, if that's their direction to which they want to go, they're not obviously paying for public education out of state dollars. So therefore, they're already getting financial help if that's what they want to do, is send their child to a private school, or whatever they want to do, homeschool. Right. Why this is going through is absolutely ridiculous.
So as I read through the bill, one of my biggest concerns, and I think it really ties in with what we've seen historically happen with Epic, is that it appears that they if this were to pass, they would create a third party, management organization that would then be responsible for managing and monitoring these public tax dollars as they move through the private system. And I can't help but think like there's just such it's an equal, it's like Epic Part 2, right? And so talk a little bit about of the potential. You did mention the potential for fraud is huge. What could that potentially look like with your experience with Epic?
Well, you have the statewide virtual charter school board was created of which to provide oversight over the statewide virtual charter schools. They do not have, they have only 3 staff members there. They do not have any accountability. They don't have regional accreditation officers. The regional accreditation officers are not working, which come out of the Oklahoma State Department of Education, obviously are not working with the state virtual charter school board. It is just has been an accountability and transparent nightmare. Epic did not follow statutes. They did not follow administrative code. They did not even follow their own contracts. They moved kids and if you'll look at the statutes for the statewide virtual charter schools, they're called a separate independent agency, legal, and they were not to be transferring kids from one school to another, as they were in Oklahoma and Tulsa County. That's strictly illegal. That is double counting kids. And the purpose was to double count kids. The only way they could make the amount of money that they were was overcounting kids. Otherwise, they could not make the amount of money of which they were. There was no legal reason for a parent to enroll their child in Epic One-on-One, which is a statewide virtual charter school, and then for Epic then to transfer that kid, count that child under Epic blended charter school. You know, you're sitting there going, this is a nightmare. Under the brick and mortar system, they are to have a seat for every single child they enroll, which Epic blended was counting 7 to 23,000 kids, which they'd had no possibility for a seat for every single child, as the statutory requirements for a brick and mortar charter school. And under the brick and mortar charter schools, if they want to, they can start an athletic team. They can have extracurricular activities because they're to take attendance exactly the way a traditional public school does. So, and we have several of our charter schools who brick and mortar that has started athletic. That is specifically in statute that a virtual charter school cannot participate in athletics because they're statewide. Yeah. And yet, you see what I'm saying? I mean, this was just violation of contract to biblical proportion, double counting kids, counting nutrition for Epic One-on-One kids that are virtual, getting thousands of dollars per month for nutrition, which again, they're virtual. And and then of course, then giving 10% of every child that was enrolled to a group of individuals that basically only had 3 employees. They did absolutely nothing. All the purchase orders came from Community Strategies, which is the name of Epic. I mean, it was just one problem after another. And yet we had our legislative leaders doing nothing about it, even though, as I said, everything that I transferred out of I CC'd the speaker and the pro tem, explaining to them how they're violating these contracts. So it just, why there was not action on the legislative level, I do not know. I don't know why it was not controlled by the Oklahoma State Department of Education or statewide virtual charter school. Now, that's just the transparency and accountability problems with Epic. Imagine what this is going to be with vouchers. Just imagine when you're giving out money on the top to individuals saying that they're going to send their child to a private school. The private school may or may not be accredited.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? We're getting into accreditation problems. That's going to be problematic. We have a lot of our little Christian schools that are not accredited, which for good reason, because you have to teach across the board in discrimination and so forth like that. And of course, your Christian schools, I understand that, but this is going to create a nightmare for accountability that would make Epic look. the biggest scandal in American history happened here in Oklahoma back in the 80s, and that was the county commissioner scandal. And that went on for about 15 years, of which thousands of dollars were embezzled and graft and corruption. Epic is into the millions of dollars. Again, it is the biggest American history scandal here in Oklahoma with Epic.
And now we're getting ready to launch into, basically it was Epic Learning Fund Part 2 with even more students that would be impacted.
Exactly right.
And, you know, we've got rural schools that don't even have, I mean, I think it's like the majority of counties in the state of Oklahoma don't even have a private school. So you've got rural school districts that are going to suffer with their funding, and they can't even take advantage of this. You know, I saw a thing with Senator Treat trying to kind of spin the talking point with rural schools of, no, this isn't bad. This is going to provide competition for those rural schools, iron sharpened iron. And I can't help but think, like, you know, I was visiting with Pastor Clark earlier today, and he mentioned that in his rural community where he grew up, you couldn't even support 2 gas stations, 2 barbershops, much less 2 schools. So what do you think about that kind of competition spin Senator Treat's trying to put on this?
To try to imagine that schools can be in competition. Competition means that you are going, the quality, quantitative and qualitative. You get into those parts. Again, when you go to a cheap hamburger place, you know you're going to get a smaller bun, you're going to get a less amount of meat on it, but you're getting what you pay for in that kind of situation. If you're a public school and you're saying, okay, we're going to be competing, I'm only going to go to school 100 days a year, where the school you're going to is going to 150 days or 180 days. You see what I mean? That's competition. Yeah. They don't understand. And government, this is the spin of which people have put on there. Government is actually more efficient than private business, because 3 out of 5 businesses that start today because of inefficiency will be out of business 1 year from today. You see what I'm saying? They don't understand. Government stays in business. Yes, it is not perfect, but it is good. We have Oklahoma cost accounting system that monitors every single dollar. That's where I'm looking at the Oklahoma cost accounting system and looking what Epic is reporting. I'm looking at all this stuff of which, you know, the number of students of which they're reporting, the number of individuals of which are, again, being transferred from Oklahoma County and Tulsa County from Epic 101. You know, you're saying, how can how can the State Department of Education let this go on when a parent is enrolling their child in Epic 101 and yet they're being counted under Epic blended? You know, you're saying, how can this go on? If we start going in this direction of vouchers, it's going to cost the taxpayers millions. As I said, I don't even understand the logic of this system. Again, if a parent wants to homeschool their child, let them have that opportunity. If a parent wants to send their child to a private school, let them have that opportunity. But don't use Oklahoma taxpayer dollars to do this.
Right. And like you mentioned earlier, I mean, I think when we look at this experiment, we look at the outcomes from other states that have tried this experiment, you know, years prior to us. There is zero evidence that it improves any academic outcomes. And it just, I don't know. It's very interesting to me. I don't understand why, if they really, really want something like this this type of experiment to go into play in the state of Oklahoma, like you said earlier, figure out a different way to fund it instead of sticking your hand in the public school cookie jar and then leaving public schools with crumbs while you're putting all the good cookies over here into private schools. It's just ludicrous to me. And I think that's the question that voters need to be asking is, who's paying for this? Why aren't you figuring out a different way to pay for it than fleecing our public schools?
The Oklahoma Constitution in Article 13 creates the local district public schools. It describes how they're to be funded to some extent. And of course, we have created a funding formula based on Article 13. So they are constitutionally created schools. In the late 1990s, the state legislature created charter schools by statute. They are not supported by the Constitution. They are statutorily created. Their money is coming directly from funds. Again, because of our funding formula, we have about 41 school districts that get zero state aid because of their wealth.
Right.
We then have another about 67 schools that are on the second tier of wealth that do not receive foundation aid. They do not get per student aid, but they do get teacher incentive aid to pay for school teachers. Mm-hmm. So those are the two top tiers. And then as a school district loses wealth, the state is to supplement them on that. And again, as I mentioned to you about the rural districts that are surrounded by farmland, they're already at a disadvantage because the fact that the rural farmland of which they live in is not taxed at the same level as your urban areas. So therefore, that is why they are so susceptible to charter schools and to vouchers, because they're the ones that's going to lose the money under this supplemental system, and therefore they're going to have to shut down, consolidate, or whatever. Right. And again, the state of Oklahoma does not own a single building that is controlled by the local districts. They created it. They are the ones went and bonded of which to create that school building. They have levies of which to maintain it. Your charter schools have to have buildings. The idea of a charter school is that the state would provide the ADM, and then a sponsor then would provide the building. Well, of course, yeah. They found out real fast that's not working very well. Right. They're now, last year they passed using some of the marijuana model, and they're not educating children as cheap as they said they could. They said, well, we can educate kids, have a better quality, a standard of child, plus do it cheaper. That's not worked out. Yeah. And so therefore, their standards of graduation, that we've not found them to be that much improved over public education. Matter of fact, in most areas, public education does a better job than charter schools, unless you interview those students and you only select the top students. Those charter schools, they're doing well, but they handpick their kids.
Well, and that's exactly what would happen with this voucher bill, giving it, the money to private schools. They're under no obligation to take all students. Nope. They can handpick which students they want.
Look at the learning disabilities problems. And again, if you think that if a private school is taking a learning disabilities child and getting that money, that they are not going to be under federal regulation, you would be kidding. The same is true for, again, a private school doesn't have to go 180 days a year or 1,080 hours. They can reduce it down to 100 days. They can say we're going to go total virtual if they want to do this under this voucher, because again, a private school can do what they want to. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, you would not have compulsory education. You have no standard of which say A, B, C, D, F standard. How are you going to make, again, if they're transferring from one school to another, how are those schools that are non-accredited, how is a school district that is accredited going to be taking these kids under this vouchers? They are creating such problems that they don't even understand in public education what they would be creating. A public education system has a standard. Again, if you're going to Calera public schools and you move to Durant, you know that Calera has a standard of which would be acceptable to Durant under accreditation. So therefore, again, these private schools would not be accredited. That has always been the problem with a private school, particularly a Christian school that doesn't want that accreditation, because again, you have to provide all the terminologies, the transgender, all the other stuff of which the Biden administration is pushing public schools to accept. Do you see what the problem? They don't even understand what they'd be getting into.
Right. And it's I believe there's another voucher bill separate from Senator Treats that has kind of a carve out voucher for, okay, so if your kid is attending an F-rated school from the state report card, then let's give them a voucher so they can escape this F-rated school. The problem with that is the private school they're transferring to, they don't know what level. There is no grading. There are no standards for that. There's really great private schools out there, but I think it's a misnomer for people to believe that kids are necessarily getting a better education at a private school, because we don't know. They don't have to test. They don't have to have scores. So that's concerning to me that, okay, well, we'll give it to F schools. Well, F schools transferring to what? We don't know. We don't know what level of education they're getting where they decide to transfer with this voucher. So to me, that one is also very problematic.
When you look at the statewide virtual charter schools, okay, they're originally, up until I believe 2018, their attendance policy was the completion of 41 activities within a quarter period, which is basically a 9-week period. 41. That's nothing. Now, again, they realized that was just far too few assignments, so they moved it up now since I believe 2018, could be 2019, to 72. But you look at EPIC's attendance policy, they show that they had a 98 to 99% attendance rate.
Right.
Well, when they were failing in graduation rates, when they were failing everything else, that attendance, 99% attendance, got them up to a D to C level.
Yeah.
You've got schools that are particularly in Oklahoma City and Tulsa that have English as second language learners. In other words, half of the kids are not even able to speak English. How are they going to pass the test? Accountability, getting them to school is always a problem, which I've had, students at English language learners. Their attendance rate is very questionable. They may show up 3 days out of the 5-day week. They're not able to pass the test because they can't even read the test.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And of course, many of them have learning disabilities, but because they can't even speak English fluently, we don't know whether they have a learning disability or whether they're just not able to speak English.
Right.
So I mean, there's just so many problems with that.
In addition to the potential fraud, we've got a situation where, we're taking public tax dollars that don't have any oversight from a receipt standpoint as far as, how the money is being spent. But we also don't have any accountability or oversight that our tax dollars are actually funding a quality education for these kids switching to private school. And I think that's something that people need to consider as well. So, okay. So next question. So if you could leave some parting words of wisdom, I'm going to have two kind of parting thoughts, but we'll start with legislators first. What would you say to legislators that are going to be having to vote on these voucher bills coming up, particularly the rural legislators? What words of wisdom and advice would you give to them on this issue that's going to be before them here, possibly in the next few weeks? We hear that this is going to fast track through. What would you say to our rural legislators out there about what's getting ready to hit in front of them for vote?
Today, whether it's rural public education or urban public education, the state of Oklahoma teachers are producing the highest quality product ever in American history and in Oklahoma history. They are doing an excellent job with the situation of which they're in. I've taught for 38 years. I guarantee you the last 10, 15 years I taught school, the quality standards improved. We were required to get into that classroom, teach to the objectives. We did it. We're doing our best with what we are able to do under the circumstances of finances. It is rural education in particular. If you took out Oklahoma City and Tulsa, rural education would be topping the charts in the productivity of their teachers. Again, Oklahoma City and Tulsa are hampered because of the number of ELL students in there who can't even speak English. So guys, support your local public school. That is the foundation of that community. That is what has built that community up, is that education. That is what the parents graduated from, the grandparents, and now the grandkids are graduating from there. Support your local school.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. And so let's switch gears a little bit. And what would you say as a final parting thought to all of the taxpayers that are watching this? Many of them, the most of them will be rural taxpayers, but we'll have people watching this from all over the state. What is your advice for them as far as if they want to make a difference in the choices of their legislators? What do they need to be doing today to block this from going through and protect their public schools?
First of all, contact your local legislator, your local senator, and your representative, either by phone or by email, and tell them that you want them to support the local district school. That is the foundation of our education system, and that is where you're going to get the best quality of product is from the local district. Why? Because there's standards of which they have to meet. Teachers there are certified. We need to support our school teachers. We need to encourage that if they go to college, they get out and they're going to be able to teach children and not have all this crazy change of academic standards, criticism of them for every move they make. Support your teachers. No, they're not perfect. We never have ever been able to create a perfect product because we are imperfect human beings. Teachers are imperfect, students are imperfect, but we're producing a good quality product. As an old athlete, I've always encouraged myself and also my students who were tennis players, be satisfied with good and build on it. Don't keep changing your game to try to be excellent, because then you'll never be consistent. You'll always be bad trying to seek excellence. And you're not ever going to be that perfected individual. Take good and build on it, and you're going to have days that you are going to be excellent, but the next day you're not going to be excellent. Why? Because you're human beings. You wake up some days, you don't feel good. The kids don't always feel good when they're in their class. You know, there's excitement for Christmas. There's always something that is deterrent that's going to stop the education process to the point at which you wish it was. Divorce, all kinds of things. But we are doing our best to take a child and produce them into a good quality product. And on days, they're going to be excellent.
Absolutely. Well, Senator Sharp, thank you so much for taking time from your day to talk with our viewers. And I am going to stop recording. And if you'll just stay on, we'll kind of close up after we start recording. So thank you again for taking time today to connect with our members. We really appreciate you. I personally am very sad to see that your voice is not up there every day in the halls of the Capitol. But I'm very grateful that you are still engaging voters and community members with your voice, and people really respect you, and thank you for all that you've done to serve public education in the state of Oklahoma.
Honored to have served. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to turn this off, but don't hang up.